Hey everyone, thanks for clicking on this video. I'm just gonna be honest here. When I was prepping for the preview exam, I kept scoring around 50th percentile on the practice tests, which really had me thinking that I was a psychopath or something. But, in my opinion, I think this is just another hoop to jump through for medical schools to collect more money. Whatever, ignore my opinion. The whole point is that if that's you too, you're not alone. I felt like everything that I was reading online was either just telling me to think like a teacher, or it was kind of just this vague list of the 9 competencies with no actual strategy. And I ended up doing a lot more prep than I needed to because I was trying to figure it out from scratch. So I ended up spending way too much time on this. I dug through all of the practice tests, and I kind of made a list of patterns and things that I want to share with you. But I ended up scoring an 8 out of 9, which is a 96 percentile. So I kind of wanted to share what actually worked because when I was trying to figure out how to study, I really felt like there was nothing out there. So hopefully you don't have to spend as much time as I did with my help now. So the general line of thinking, that whole like, could this solution help or will it make it worse? If you know nothing about the preview exam, I'd first kind of click on another video before jumping into what I'm talking about here. But if you've tried to study for it, you'll know what I'm talking about. That whole general line of thinking where you're trying to figure out if the answer will make the solution or make the scenario worse or better. I thought it was pretty helpful. It helped me most of the time. But then I kind of ran into scenarios where I felt like the ideas about what might worsen or fully alleviate the problem were somewhat subjective. So what I did was like I mentioned, I scraped the practice tests to find out what the AAMC deems helpful or unhelpful. And then I made a whole list of them depending on the scenario type. So I put together these little slides on Canva, but this is really just me trying to talk without giving away who I am because I don't want admissions teams to know that I had to study for this exam. Forgive me for not putting my face on this, but I promise I made it. So anyway, let's get into an example. So one scenario that I saw come up a ton throughout my study time was that there were scheduling conflict problems, right? So they'll tell you, oh, you have a lab that you have to attend this morning, but you also said that you would help your best friend set up for their birthday party. What do you do, right? So that would be an example of a scheduling conflict scenario. So what I found was over all of the scenarios that involved scheduling conflicts, these were the patterns that came up in the correct answer choices. So a very ineffective response would include skipping the commitment without letting someone know. So if you just completely ghosted someone, that'd be very ineffective. Politely skipping an important commitment. I personally would have thought that would be just an effective answer, not a very very ineffective answer. But of course, I was wrong there. You can laugh at me if you want. Avoiding commitments entirely, duh. That's a very ineffective answer. Making demands, also duh. Ineffective responses would include partially skipping an important commitment, like if you only come to half of it. Showing up late to your important commitment, also ineffective. Politely skipping a commitment that isn't that important, like something that's encouraged but not mandatory. Maybe it's a volunteer event. Asking someone else to manage your commitment. So if you ask your friend to fill in for your shift without really offering to take something for them. Asking someone else to manage your responsibility, same kind of idea. If you have the right idea, but you're saying it in the wrong tone, that will be an ineffective response. So even if you say like, okay, let's say you came up with a good solution, like one of the effective or very effective responses, but you said it in kind of a mean way, then it would be ineffective. Limiting time spent doing something important, like studying. They hate when you limit your studying. Effective responses: partially skipping a commitment that isn't that important, like something that's encouraged but not mandatory. That would be effective because it's just one step up from fully skipping that commitment, which would be ineffective. Showing up late to a commitment that isn't that important is also effective. So encouraged but not mandatory. Fulfilling the most important commitment without fulfilling the less important commitment. So if you show up for your lab, but you don't help your friend at all with her birthday, in that example I explained earlier, that would be fulfilling the more important commitment without fulfilling the less important commitment. Then what you suggest would be a very effective solution, but it prioritizes a less important commitment over one that should take priority. Vaguely asking to reschedule a voluntary commitment. You need to be very specific and not vague. A temporary or partial solution that won't prevent it from happening again. Like maybe you take a couple days off to catch up on your schoolwork, but you don't come up with a study strategy to prevent you from falling behind again. Just generally any partial solution, so something that addresses part of the problem but not the rest of the problem. A solution that doesn't prevent reoccurrence, so same kind of idea with the 2 bullet points before. Something that helps but it doesn't get at the root of the problem. Asking for advice from an unofficial source, like asking your friend for advice rather than asking an authority figure. Very effective responses would include, of course, finding a way to attend to or complete all of your commitments or responsibilities. Finding an alternative for the less important commitment while fulfilling the important commitment. For example, you attend your lab and you ask your friend if you can help set up the night before instead of during that time when you have to go to lab. Politely asking to reschedule a voluntary commitment with a concrete and reasonable time suggestion. That would be very effective. Offering to help a peer if they help you in return. Like if you take their shift, like if they take your shift and you take theirs on another day. Sorry if that was a word salad there. And then the last one is asking an authority figure for advice or help. That's always very effective. So I found that there are several major scenario types. There's scheduling conflicts, patient care, grades and classwork, receiving feedback, biased or inappropriate behavior, reporting bad behavior, helping others, not including patients, social conflicts and problems, and then teamwork. So that encompasses, in my opinion, the majority of the questions you're going to see on the exam. And I have patterns like this for each one of those in my study guide that I linked. So I'll talk about that in a second. But basically, over my study period, I was really meticulous and I listed the patterns for each of these. And then I also created 30 practice scenarios for myself and 3 full practice tests kind of based on the AAMC content that was public. Of course, I changed it up so I wouldn't be able to recognize it when I tested myself. There are some other free resources with practice tests. I kind of used those to create new scenarios and test myself that way. And then I kind of matched up each right answer with one of the patterns I noticed. So for example, like in the practice test, I would have ineffective responses and then decide which one of these patterns matched it. But then I took the exam and I did really well and I had all this content. So I figured that I should share it, especially because there's so little study material available. I pasted the link to the study guide below. And at the end of the day, I really hope that this helps people get into medical school, because if you've made it this far, you're totally deserving. And best of luck with your cycle.